Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm UncleLander and this is Resident Evil Revelations 2. On the last episode we have pretty much unlocked the good ending for the game, and I was trying to make a review of the game, but the problem is my internet basically decided to die on me, basically ruined the entire post-review thing, and I couldn't even record the proper ending, but that's besides the point. For this video, I really want to try to review this game because there's a little bit to talk about. The first thing that I can really say about Resident Evil Revelations 2 is that it is a very good Resident Evil game. If you manage to get it on the discount, grab it. And yes, I'm saying that at the very beginning of the video because it is 100% worth it. It's somebody who have played through pretty much solid 95% Resident Evil games. If I'm saying that at the beginning, grab it, because this is a very good Resident Evil game. Now, let's try to review every single of the elements of the game. This video, well, maybe before we're gonna start the review, which is perfectly planned, totally not recorded without any script or without any plan whatsoever. This video is recorded live on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/UncleLander, where I'm playing variety of video games, links in the description. In pinned comment. So, to do my a little bit of an amateur review of this game, because I'm not a professional reviewer in any way, shape, or form. This game, starting with the maybe graphics. Graphically, I don't really pay that much attention to it. I'm not the guy who goes for graphics, but graphically the game looks great. It's not obnoxious. There's no area that is too dark or too bright. You always have something that you can have a point of reference. For example, if you're actually stepping into a dark room, you have a companion that has a light that can actually light the entire area for you so you can see everything, and there's basically no situation in which, even without a companion, that you have problems or struggles seeing anything. You basically always see everything. Everything is pretty bright, everything is pretty great. Textures are pretty nicely detailed. Graphically wise, it's all good. Gameplay wise, on the other hand, gameplay wise, it's a little bit weird thing, because there's a lot of things that are very, very good, but there's also some things that actually I could be bothered with. So maybe the thing that I'm definitely getting bothered with is the way you are using your sprint and general controls, because even as you play the game, when you play the game with the mouse and keyboard, the sensitivity of the camera and your aiming is pretty much high. Okay, let me show you guys. Maybe I'm gonna jump into the campaign and I'm gonna pick an episode. Let it be Barry episode 2. Let's just go through that. How about we gonna do that? How about we gonna do that? And we're gonna skip the cutscenes because that's not what I really want to do.
Previously on Revelations 2.
Yeah, I don't really care about what had happened previously. I just want to jump back into the game so I can show my my deal with the controls. Alright, so...
Moira. No, I don't believe it. There's no way she's...
Yeah, there's no way. Okay, so let's start with the controls. Keyboard mouse controls, that's a fast move. Camera. Even though that I have the camera speed and aiming speed at 1, even though as I'm gonna ever so slightly move the mouse in the game like this, the camera is still pretty fast. I would say that's even too fast. But at the setting of 1, it's not really as bad as it is on the example the setting 3 or setting 5 or setting anything like that. You're pretty much good when it comes to that. Aiming, when the aiming is set up on 1, this is the actual speed. Which still, even as you use the mouse, it can really feel like you are not really using the mouse. It feels like this game could definitely play better on a controller more than anything else. it feels like this game was even made for a controller usage. I don't even know or remember where this game got ported from, because it really feels like this game was ported from a different platform altogether onto the PC itself. But when it comes to playability of the game itself, by default, this game is performing so much better, because I couldn't make Revelations 1 to work with me at all, but this gun works perfectly from the very beginning till the very end. I didn't even have to like use any different software or any ways to bypass the game to launch the game and play it, so that's good. But okay, control wise, that's one of my caveats, is that the mouse acceleration, even though you disable it, you can still kind of feel it, and you really have to reduce the speed of the mouse while aiming and the control of the camera at all times, because otherwise you're basically gonna go freaking crazy by just touching the mouse ever so slightly. The other thing that I don't really find that great is that when you sprint, you control the movement of your character with mouse. You can do it with mouse, but you can also do it with the A and D button on your keyboard. The problem is, you're gonna get that confused, because a lot of times you're gonna have situations in which, hey, you sprint over here, but you have enemy on the left, or on the right side, and you want to keep an eye on that enemy to see when you can actually shoot, to figure out where you actually want to go, and that's gonna create automatically a problem, because the mouse and the keyboard is gonna start conflicting with each other, and both of those things are gonna start fighting. So that is something that probably can be fixed somewhere. I don't know if there is a method of fixing it. If there is, I simply need to find it out. Besides that, I can already say when it comes to controls, the weapon switching, the usage of the knife, like you don't have to hold the button to use the knife, though you can. But the combat controls, the weapon switching is just so nice, it's so smooth. You want to aim the gun, sure, obviously you have the reticle, but whenever you shoot the gun hits. And I really love about that. It's not like in Resident Evil 4 Remake, the vanilla Resident Evil 4 Remake, in which even if you aim the gun at something right in the middle, every single weapon to me acts like a shotgun. It does not happen in this game, which is absolutely great. I really love the gameplay mechanics. The dodging is maybe a little bit of the thing that I kind of find difficult to like get used to, because again, it really feels like it's very, very stiff. To perform a dodge, you need to hold the button in the direction and then press spacebar, because otherwise the dodging is just not gonna work if you try to press two buttons at the same time. Because for example, if you press the spacebar first and you start moving around, the character just doesn't perform the move. You need to press the direction button first and then you can perform the dodge. I really like the inclusion of ducking in this game. There's even though that you duck and you don't really necessarily have to do it, later you get a skill point tree, which I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in a second or two, which also includes that the crouching is actually a more useful thing to do in combat in a general defense. In general defense, that doesn't make sense, but it's basically crouch is here and it's useful. That's what I want to say. What else can I say about the controls? I don't think there's anything about controls that I can really say, but if there's one thing that I really enjoy about this game, is the menu navigation is super simple and super easy, and exchanging the items between the characters is just, you press on an item, pass it to the character, and that's it. You don't really have to struggle with anything when it comes to this, and I really like that. I really enjoy that. The other thing that we can definitely notice is that certain items, like healing items, additional weapons, which, by the way, using the additional weapons is also pretty brilliant. You press one button, you hold it, you can switch the additional weapon, like molotovs or grenades or whatever you're gonna use, and you can just switch it with the middle mouse. I'm playing this on PC, by the way, if I haven't mentioned that before. And you basically switch between those, you hold the button, and then you just throw it with the left button, and that's it. It's that simple. And while you're aiming, you still can move. This is why I am being persistent about using a mouse and keyboard for this game. Because if the controls over here were identical to Resident Evil 4 Classic, which means once you aim, you cannot move around, then yeah, sure. Controller would be like the thing that I would use for this. But because of that, even if it's a slight movement, it's still a movement. So I'd rather use the mouse and keyboard. Anyway, I really like that you have introduced stacks in this game. Stacks for healing, stacks for explosives, certain stacks for another healing items, which there's a lot of variety of healing items besides the green herb. You don't get a first aid spray, which is kind of weird because I thought that first aid spray is a kind of an iconic item, all things considered. Yeah, combination screen. Look at that. This is actually my first time when I discovered the combination screen. And you know what's even funniest about this? Is that you don't even need to use the combination screen. You can simply, if you have an item to combine, you basically press on this, combine, and the item that you need to combine with the item A is being automatically highlighted for you. Therefore, the combining menu is kind of pointless unless you really want to use it. Go ahead. God, I'm losing my train of thought. This is not a professional review, by the way. This is just my sharing my thoughts about this game because this game is brilliant and I really, really like it. But anyway, menu navigation is great. The menu in itself is absolutely amazing. Like I said, the weapon play is great, but the controls, like the controlling the character is a little bit stiff, but you can get used to that after a little while. Also, you can always switch the controls if you want to. I did not try to play this game on the controller. I might actually do a second playthrough of this game on the controller. Maybe it's gonna fare a little bit better. Maybe I'm gonna like the controller a little bit more. But yeah, maybe from gameplay, was there anything? Okay, so I talk about the menu. I talk about the dodging and movement and combat. Maybe let's talk about the weapons, because you definitely get a variety of weapons over here. Barry gets his Stars pistol. He's got his Samurai Edge, but he also brings to the table the assault rifle. That's his two starter weapons that he brings into this game. You can find additional attachments to the weapons later in the game that can help you and help create some crazy builds when it comes to certain weapons. The mods you can find are, some of them can be very basic, like increase reload speed, increase the magazine capacity, increase the damage. But you can pretty much slap those modifications on almost every single weapon. For example, when I was playing as Claire, I have found the capacity mod. Claire is using she has a choice. She can use a double barrel shotgun, or she can use a pump action shotgun, which honestly, when it comes to Claire, I just recommend using double barrel shotgun. So what I did with certain mods is that I have applied, I have basically applied, increased the magazine capacity in the double barrel shotgun. It created an absolute freaking abomination of a double barrel shotgun being able to fire 5 times before reloading. It was absolutely hilarious. It was absolutely great. Very similar situation with me slapping a burst effect. A burst effect is one of those effects that allows you to shoot 2 times in one shot. I applied the burst effect on a revolver, so it was even more hilarious that way. You have also a variety of weapons, because, okay, sure, like I said, you start with the Samurai Edge as Barry. You find more weapons along the way. You find your regular pistol, you find your regular shotgun, but as you progress, you can find more weapons. You can find better pistol, better rifle, submachine guns, sniper rifles, shotguns. There's variety to the weaponry, and actually really like the fact that the weapons that you find are actually a little bit modified. Like, for example, the gun that we see over here is an actual version of an AR-15 with the change lower and upper receiver, so it can actually receive 7.62 by 39 millimeters. There's an actual real life version of this gun existing. It can it can actually take the AK magazines, and I really like it about that. You can find your Mosin, you can find your SVDs, you can find your Scorpion submachine guns, Uzis. There's a choice. There's even a Makarov in this game, because the entire action of this game actually takes place on an island that apparently the native people who are living inside of this island are basically speaking Russian. They're Russian-speaking people. I know, right? Lovely. But besides that, guns are good. There's no situation in this game in which guns are absolutely useless. Because the enemies in this game, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, maybe it's going to be the next thing I'm going to talk about. Enemies in this game, there's just so much variety into them. There's no weapon that's going to be totally useless. Even the pistol, your very first basic pistol that you find, is already very useful against the very basic enemies, which you're gonna find those enemies as you play along. But maybe, yeah, let's talk about the enemies. Like I said, plenty of variety of enemies, from decomposed zombies to absolute abominations upon the freaking god. So yeah, maybe let's start with the regular zombie, which basically looks like a Walking Dead corpse. They're looking absolutely amazing. And they're the most basic, the easiest enemies that you can fight. Against, the slowest, with very slow attacks. Couple shots to the head, maybe not even, and they're basically done. The second enemy that I remember that I think I found the most annoying, because I'm arachnophobic, is those little scattering bugs. They are usually popping out in like darker areas, or they're basically popping out from time to time as an ambush enemy. I do not really like them. I mean, sure, the easiest way to defeat them is just, approach them, just smack them with the blade, just slice them up, don't worry about anything, just slice those enemies up. But I simply do not really like them, because they are just bringing up my arachnophobia out. So that is what it is. Barry also encounters a very specific... I mean, there's enemies that are both parties are actually encountering. Like this review sucks. No. That's actually is not true. Because when I realized something, Barry meets different enemies and Claire meets different enemies. Barry, the other enemy that Barry meets is this compilation of body parts that are being connected together, but they are being connected together because all those bodies were implanted with Ouroboros parasite, and the only way to beat them is to basically find a weak spot, which in case of Barry, it's Natalia who can point out the enemy exists and where the enemy actually has the weak spot on him. But yeah, you take the rifle, you take the weapon of your choice, you destroy the enemy first you aim for the spot that has the weak spot, which exposes the weak spot, and then you destroy the weak spot, which kills the enemy. And I don't know the names of the enemies. I'm doing this review pretty much fresh, post my first playthrough of the game. But but it is what it is, Those are pretty basic enemies. They're definitely much faster though, than your regular decomposed zombie, if you will. What do we have next on the list? The next enemy on the list that I also don't know really, that I don't know their names, are dogs. There are definitely some dogs showing up during this playthrough, but they are kind of... They're pretty much negligible. They're only popping out like maybe 3 or 4 times throughout the entire game, and that's it. Dogs are pretty much negligible. They are attacking in packs. They're easy to defeat. You can bring a shotgun against them and just have fun, just destroy them. The other enemy that I know is that this ginormous swollen body that has a weak spot pretty much visible at the front of it. But the way it attacks, it basically lobs like this one ginormous limb, which turns out to be a parasite in itself. It's like a mortar attack in which it basically it covers a lot of ground, and when it crashes into you, it deals a lot, and I mean a lot of damage. But it's very easy to defeat because the enemy doesn't move very fast, and you can, and pretty much 90% of the time you always gonna have it. You always have this moment to aim at the weak spot, and if not stun the enemy, then kill him properly. The third enemy that we have that I remember on Barry's side was, again, I don't know the names, but it was the first encounter that I had of that enemy was in the mines. It's the enemy that has this ginormous claw, which it uses that claw to cover its own weak spot, which is like in the middle of its body. And that enemy can be pretty annoying, but if you know how to use the explosives, like for example, explosive over here, yeah, exploding bottle right here. If you throw the exploding bottle plenty of times, 2 or 3 times, that specific enemy basically crumbles on the ground. He's being defenseless. His weak spot is getting absolutely exposed, and you can just barge on him. But if there's a plenty of distance between you and him, and you have a sniper rifle, which I have right here, you can basically basically and simplistically, you can basically aim at the weak spot. You basically can always hit that weak spot whenever it's properly exposed or more or less properly exposed. Now I think I could jump to the enemies on the Claire side, because Claire and Moira, which about the characters I'm gonna speak a little bit later. The first enemy that you get in the Claire's chapters is like those maniacal, like feral people that have been mutated to absolute bits, and they're not really that dangerous. They're not really that really that bad. Oh my god, look at that. Even the clothing of the game, it reacts to the wind that blows, and it's waving around. This game is so gorgeous. This game is so good. Anyway, the feral enemies, well, they can be sort of dangerous. They are definitely more dangerous than your regular decomposed corpse. But, you know, a good shot in the head can actually put them down the ground, and you don't really have to worry about them. But there is a little bit of a twist later in the game, because the same feral enemies later can mutate. They swollen up, and they become basically those swole-walking kamikaze bombs. For which I have only discovered that quite recently, that you don't have to really shoot at them that much. You basically take Moira, you put the light on them, and that causes them to explode, which is pretty much great. And now my allergies are calling. Perfectly, yes, perfectly great. Sorry about that. I'm not a professional reviewer, but starting next year, I'm gonna probably do those things. Like on the side, I'm gonna probably try to write the scripts, or at least points of reference. That's gonna help me in like keeping my thoughts, in keeping everything in order. Anyway, those, like I said, those kamikaze slow walking bombs can be easily destroyed with the light that Moira uses, which is absolutely, which definitely feels weird, because you would expect to use a lot of firearms against them. Anyway, that's the feral enemy. There's a second type of enemy, which is much stronger, which sort of reminds you of Garador, because the way the enemy looks is that you have this ginormous 7 feet tall person with bunch of metal parts just embedded into its body and metal helmet at the front. Which, even though it's a metal helmet, it doesn't really help them from not being stunned by the Moira's light. But they are basically there. They're much stronger. They're taking more damage. They're dealing more damage. That's basically is their deal. There's actually an enemy that I have not mentioned while we are talking about Barry. Is those that's the only enemy that I can figure out their name while I was playing the game. Glasps. Enemies with absolutely worst name for an enemy you can ever give to them. And I always call them discount novistadors. For people who have played Resident Evil 4 Classic or Remake, you guys already know what I'm talking about. Or what kind of abilities they might have. So basically Glosps, or Disconvistadors, as I'm gonna try to call them from this point on, these guys are, most of the time they're invisible. The closer you get to them, the more damage to you they're gonna deal until you're gonna get incapacitated. They can also grab you and attack you as well. But Natalia over here can actually see them, and she can point them out for you, and you can just shoot them down. They are not really taking that many bullets to kill. And you can also encounter them as Claire and Moira, but it only happens pretty much by the end of the 4th chapter, by the end of the first half of the 4th episode, the chapter for Claire and Moira. So that's that. Is there any other enemy that I forgot to mention? For Claire, yeah, there's this ginormous guy, this ginormous fat ass with a fire cannon and a torch, which, first of all, that guy becomes a boss fight that you have to deal with, but then he becomes a regular encounter. That guy basically becomes a regular encounter, a regular fight in the game. And his attack is basically, he has on one side, he has this ginormous pouch of, like, I don't know, maybe it's the balls that are being doused in, like, inflammable oil. In the other hand, he has a torch. He basically flames that ball in. The pressure inside basically launches the ball at you, dealing enormous amounts of damage. Was there any other enemy that I have missed for Moira and Claire? Out of the bat, I cannot really remember that well. I genuinely cannot really remember that well, but I think that's all the enemies that I could mention for both of the parties, as far as I remember. Yeah, that I'm pretty sure this part is all the enemies. Now maybe let's talk about the characters. None of the characters are annoying. None of them are bad. There are some weaker sides to the old-timer characters, but in general, all the characters are good. Maybe let's start with... maybe let's start with drinking some water. Or drinking some tea, because I'm definitely gonna need it. Yes, UncleLander, professional review. Let's start with Claire, because I think she is the weakest character of the entire game. Like, you would expect Claire to be a character that is like one of the most famous characters, one of the most beloved characters. Here she acts really, really, really weird. She prioritizes solving the entire mystery of this entire island, of this entire place, getting to the villain, eliminating the villain, more than she cares about her own safety and safety of others. And it's specifically shown when basically you have chapter 4, where she even literally says that I'm not letting her get away, or something like that. She basically prioritizes eliminating the main threat, despite the fact that you had 3 minutes of time to escape the entire location because the self-destruction has been activated. She's also pretty gullible for some reason. Or she acts like she is a tier 3 on Twitch. Because there's this character called Nail. Nail is by the way, spoilers. If you haven't played this game yet, you're gonna hear a bunch of fucking spoilers here. So it's a fair warning. So Nail, we have this character of Nail that pretty much created a list of people that's gonna get specifically kidnapped so they can get transported to this island so they can get experimented upon. One of those people on the list is Claire and Moira. But despite the fact that we are finding evidence after evidence after evidence, even Moira points it out that Nail should not be really trustworthy, Claire just automatically denies that, and she says, "No, he couldn't do that. No, it's not Nail. Nail is good." I mean, like, Claire, come on. Also, her approach to the child was, like, way more awful, because you actually encounter Natalia over here, as you play with mostly with Barry, but there are some moments as you encounter her with Claire and Moira as well. In Resident Evil 2 Classic and or Remake, her approach to small kids is way different. Like, she actually takes care, she approaches them calmly, she actually talks with them, calms them down. In Revelations 2, Claire is like, "Hey kid, what's going on? Who are you? What is this? Do you know a way out?" You know, basically putting a bunch of stress on the little girl over here. Solely, it really feels like it's not even like Claire in this game. I do not hate her, but I think Claire is really the weakest character in the entire game, period. Then you have... Jesus Christ, I'm sorry, I need to drink some more water, dude. Oh wait, I still have a sip of tea. Alright, so maybe I'm gonna have water here ready. So the second character that I want to review over here is Moira, which I really like her. She's a very lively character. She takes absolutely no bullshit, and she is not afraid to show it. And I really like it. But she also does. She's not afraid of showing her sensitive side. A character that, due to her past, because okay, so how to say it? Her past. Basically, there was an accident. Barry left a unsecured weaponry in the house. It happened way in the past, by the way. Like a count of like several, at least 10 years. Moira and her sister were playing with that gun. There was a neglected discharge. The sister of Moira have died due to this. And Moira, since that point on, hates guns. She refuses to use guns. And basically, throughout the entire playthrough, there's a moment in which she beats her hatred and fear of guns. But Moira is not an annoying character. She supports Claire very good. She's actually a very good mixture. She saves Claire, in a matter of fact, because the writing for Claire was kind of went out of the window. I don't know what have happened to Claire. She's also not useless. If there's one thing that I can truly say about this game is that the companion characters are never useless in this game. Because even despite the fact that Moira refuses to use a firearm, she finds a blunt weapon, crowbar in this case, and she utilizes that crowbar as her own weapon. But also, on top of it, she can use that crowbar to unlock certain passages and certain doors. So yeah. But Moira in general, I really like her character. She's very nice, she's very great. Definitely a good support character, and she's definitely a Burton. She's definitely Barry's kid, because well, Barry also doesn't take a lot of shit, but there's one thing that they share together, and it might be a little bit of a petty comparison between them two, but they both love to curse. They both love the curse. And Moira also has a way better approach to the kids than Claire is gonna ever have in this game, period. Okay, so maybe now let's go for Barry and Natalia over here. So Barry basically is this old grizzled BSAA veteran that basically looks for his daughter after Moira, in this case, after she gets kidnapped because, like I said before, Neil basically kind of helped the main villain of this game to kidnap all the people and start experimenting with them. Barry is also kind of this no bullshit kind of guy that wants to basically get to the point of everything. He wants to find his daughter at any cost. Maybe not at any cost, but he's definitely getting that at his top priority. But he also he's not afraid to show his sensitive side, because the moment he finds Natalia, you can definitely see that this parental side of him is waking up. He's taking care of Natalia. He's defending her. She's doing everything to make sure that Natalia is not cold or she is not, harmed in any way, shape, or form. And I think that the fatherly warmth that Barry emanates from him also comes from the things that happened to him in the past. Like I mentioned before, that neglected discharge accident that caused a death of one of his kids. And it's also definitely have shown that as much as Moira definitely hates herself for this entire situation, Barry also blames himself for it, and he even says for what he blames himself for this. But his first reaction that made him and Moira starting to separate each other apart, which is even disclosed in the story, is the fact that the first thing that Barry have done is he started screaming at Moira, which Moira basically took that very personally, not surprising. And basically they started the more they started to live together, the more they started falling apart, and throughout the events of this game, they actually have reunited, sort of. I'm probably gonna get to that a little bit later. So yeah, Barry is actually pretty damn good. He's funny. He tries to make a little bit of puns. It seems like he spent a lot of time with Chris Redfield, and he's just tossing random puns, random joke every now and then, which definitely are rewarding a nice little... Undeniably, it's still the same good old Barry. And the fact that he even says his iconic lines pretty much almost at the very end of the game is just, it's cream of the crop. That's all I'm gonna say. Now Natalia over here. So, Natalia over here, turns out, first of all, she is one of the survivors of the Revelations 1 game. She survived throughout the entire event, but you don't play as her throughout that entire thing. She also gets kidnapped into the island by the main villain. And I'm going to say that Natalia, she always plays that vulnerable little girl, but she's not useless, because Natalia and her abilities, besides being a portable backpack, she can point out enemies at you. When she crouches down, she basically have this like power of sensing the enemy presence and also detecting their weak spots, which she can point at them like this. I even have made a little bit of a joke about Natalia, that she's a perfect representation of a freaking backseat gamer. Because she just normally she just walks around and she just, oh look at this, Barry, a gem, look at this, a rock, look at this, a tree, look at this, a bush. And you can do it like that with her, a little bit of a joke. But yeah, Natalia acts like a regular kid, but she can definitely take care of herself. I mean, after all, the moment that Barry finds her, it has been like 6 months. Because, okay, there's a huge time difference. It's a huge time lapse between what happens to Claire and Moira and what happens with Barry and Natalia. It's a 6 months of space. So she can definitely take care of herself 100%, not even having any doubts about that. But there's one very certain thing about Natalia. She is pretty much, I would consider her to be a tragic character of the game. Because as much as she is just a kid, the main villain basically kidnaps her and imprints the main villain's personality onto her mind. And she even gets in, we don't know that, but she gets experimented about that. She gets infected with the Ouroboros parasite, which she actually can control by herself without major problems. It even gets shown later in the game. That she can actually do it without any problems. And I think that all that mental manipulation, the physical manipulation that happens to her, she doesn't even know about that, because she loses all her memories of the entire experimentation, of where she was. She regains those memories as we play with Barry, as we meeting her with Claire and Moira. But I consider her to be pretty tragic, because imagine, it's basically a personality wipe dilemma. It's something that I have already mentioned in Cyberpunk 2077. Slowly, the imprint that has been has been transplanted into the Natalia's head, it shows up itself. It's pops out every now and then, a few spots. And if you achieve a bad ending, the entire villainous personality just shows up. It's right there. Oh my god, we're gonna talk about the endings too. We're gonna talk about the endings too, because this is also a thing that I find it. I find it a little bit bothersome, but maybe after the characters. Okay, let's just touch the endings and like the story after I'm gonna describe all the characters that I want. So yeah, Natalia, a tragic character. She gets kidnapped. She gets experimented by the main villain. In the end, I mean, actually, depend on the ending. She's either she kind of embraces the both. But the thing is, in one of the endings, she just fully embraces it, while in the other ending, she kind of discovers that she has that imprint and she kind of is evil, which is pretty sad because you have this small little girl that's definitely vulnerable to an extent, and then she just it all gets erased. The entire personality just get erased, and I consider that to be tragic because you're losing yourself so something else can overwrite you. It's like overwriting a file, only you actually know that you're overwriting a sentient freaking being. Maybe a little bit too. Maybe I'm getting a little bit too philosophical about it, but it's simply how I feel about the character of Natalia. Now, the main villain of this game, Alex Wesker, which turns out to be a sister of Albert Wesker, which I didn't even knew that Wesker even had a freaking family. I know that Wesker got born from like experiments himself, but I didn't realize that there was a second Wesker survivor. I only thought that Albert Wesker was the only one, and he basically lived since even before Resident Evil 0 up to Resident Evil 5, and there's no more Weskers. Turns out he has a sister, because I even remember now that that sister was a villain in Resident Evil Resistance, that co-op multiplayer game that was included in the RE3 remake. God forsake me ever touching that game ever again. It's a curse. It's a Resistance. Okay, so just two sentences about Resistance. Resistance was an amazing online co-op game that I could play probably for a very, very long time, but then they decided to release a villain that is an absolute trash, and then they decided to nerf survivors, even though survivors needed buff, and they decided to buff the villains more. Basically, they made the entire pleasure out of playing Resistance to be... Anyway. Alex Wesker shows up in the Resistance, she's the villain over there, and that's it. What is my problem with Alex Wesker is that there are kind of two versions of her. The one that you meet with Claire, and the one that you meet with Barry and Moira. When you meet her as Moira and Claire, she still has her human form. I know, who would suspect a villain in Resident Evil game that turns from human into an absolute abomination? I know, I'm surprised myself. Anyway, she still has her human form, but she already acts very, very disturbed. Her main goal is to blow up and then act like she doesn't know anybody. Okay, no, stupid memes aside. Her main goal is to live forever, which is the most it's like the most basic of the plots that you can add to anybody ever. You can add that plot to the main hero and to the main villain at any point, and depending on how character behaves, you can describe it as good or evil. In this case, it's evil. So yeah, basically Alex Wesker arrives into this island. She hires every single person on this island to start working on excavation and mines and all of that. But over time, she starts basically taking more and more people into her laboratory division, for which she starts experimenting with T-Phobos virus and Ouroboros at the same time. Alex's goal is like I said, become immortal, but she accepts the fact that her body becomes frail. So what she basically does is she finds Natalia, her body accepts the Ouroboros parasite, and what she does is she imprints her own personality, every inch of her personality, into Natalia's brain. It really feels like that. There was several tries of Alex Wesker doing that. It's even like pointed out in the notes. And basically, well, she does it. She succeeds at it. Because at a certain point, when you play as Barry... Okay, maybe let's not go that far. Basically, if you go for the chapter 4 with Claire, you meet the Alex Wesker in her mortal human form for the very last time. Because she does something, she basically she basically turns herself offline. Because well, this review is it's gonna be placed on YouTube. I cannot say certain words without this video getting absolutely removed from the algorithm. Anyway, she in front of us, she just basically, she turns herself offline. But then, despite the fact of that, she actually gets back to life, and she becomes an absolute abomination upon God, because we see her when we are playing as Barry and Natalia over here. She turns into an absolute monster with a bunch of metal parts just sticking out of her body that barely keeps itself together. And earlier, as Alex was more villainous, she was more of a... She almost tries to be a little bit of a poetic villain, into extent, because she constantly... I mean, it doesn't really make her poetic. Quoting from philosophical books or from books in general doesn't make you a villain. It just makes you uncomfortable. It makes you disturbing. It turns her from that disturbing human form into absolutely even more disturbing monstrous form that calls Natalia a fake. All the thing that she does, the mutated Alex, all things that she does is to destroy Natalia as much just damage her, destroy her life as much as she can. Which she does. She actually does that a lot. But then there's this thing. It's a pretty much a weird thing. I mean, when I think about it a little bit longer now, it's not really a bad thing. Because Alex Wesker knows that Natalia has an imprint, but Natalia is awake. Alex Wesker was probably not yet ready to leave this realm, even though she became offline in front of us, to become even more powerful, to become a monster. And I think Alex is basically so afraid of being replaced by Natalia that she does everything to make Natalia's life as miserable as possible. And she does, by constantly chasing her, by constantly stalking her, by talking to her, calling her fake, useless, an abomination, and all that stuff. She even found a teddy bear that Natalia had at the beginning of the game. She finds that teddy bear and she basically crucifies that teddy bear to a freaking rock. And Natalia even reacts very angrily, obviously, because it's a teddy bear, and she considers that teddy bear to be her friend. But then something weird happens on the chapter 3. Basically, there's a situation in which Barry gets basically gets unconscious. He loses consciousness, and there's only Natalia, and there's only Alex. For some reason, which I do not understand that fully why, all of a sudden, Alex Wesker, from this absolute terrifying monster, she curls up and being scared like a little puppy. Is she being afraid that the Ouroboros actually has been fully awakened in Natalia's body and she can actually fully control it? That is a question that I still haven't answered. But then again, when you discover an evil ending for this game, you can pretty much figure out that the Ouroboros and the personality that has been implemented into Natalia fully awakens, and she just absolutely destroys Alex Wesker. Like, she just rips her heart out and she absolutely annihilates her, like right there on the spot. Not even joking, dude. But as a villain in herself, I don't really think that Alex Wesker is just as evil or maniacal as Albert Wesker. She's a good villain for this game, but I wouldn't say that she's the best villain in general. I mean, her goals to become... Okay, she's kind of like full of contradictions. In a way, well, maybe not full of contradictions. There's one contradiction I have found so far about her. Is that she wants to live forever, but then she becomes she makes herself offline. But then she imprints herself on to a mind of a child, which technically it's only an imprint. It's not Wesker herself, which basically asks a question: what's the fucking point here? What's the point of doing all of that when you can basically manipulate the virus so we can live longer, which was already shown in the lore of the game that this can actually happen, with Jill being infected with the T-virus and actually not aging as fast as every single other member of Resident Evil. Or the same that would happen with Sherry Birkin, which is actually very similar to that in Resident Evil 6, because when Sherry Birkin also ages very slowly, and also she has a incredible regenerative abilities. And as we know, basically aging is our regenerative abilities not basically being as good as they were before. So why does she basically doesn't take that example? Why doesn't she observe the other characters for a little bit and tries to convert the T-virus, T-Phobos virus, and Ouroboros just to make her live a little bit longer without going through all those mutations? I mean, obviously she would probably go through all the mutations and all that bullshit again, because it's a Wesker. And because it's a Resident Evil villain. There's no a situation in any Resident Evil game when main villain of the game doesn't turn himself into monster in one way or another. I mean, example, Albert Wesker, he turned himself into pretty much a mutant in the first Resident Evil 1 game when he woken up. He just escaped the freaking mansion accident, then he absorbs the entire Ouroboros thing, and then he becomes an actual monster. Sadler, which you think he is a human being, but then he turns himself into a freaking four-legged motherfucker. In RE5, you have plenty of situations like that. I mean, you have Irvin, which turns himself into a freaking not even Nessie. That's an insult to the Loch Ness monster. He turns himself into this freaking crocodile. Then you have Excella, which in case of Excella, it's a totally different conversation, because Excella gets infected with Ouroboros, but the Ouroboros kind of refuses. Rejects. That's the word that I'm looking for. The Ouroboros kind of rejects her body in that stage. So yeah, and also let's not mention Resident Evil 6, in which Resident Evil 6, the freaking dude, whatever his name is, I cannot remember it right now. The guy just turns into a goddamn transformer. The freaking Michael Bay should sue that guy. That's all I'm gonna say. Because the main villain in RE6, he just turns himself into a dinosaur, he turns himself into a freaking insect, he turns himself into other fucking things. He basically is a walking transformer. But yeah, as a villain, Alex Wesker, kinda weak, good for this game, bad in general. That is basically my thoughts about Alex Wesker. Now, the story of the game and maybe the endings. So the story of the game in itself is actually is pretty nice. I wouldn't say that it's like the top of the the top of the bookshelves, the bestseller ever. I wouldn't say that. The story is good. It's not the best. Sure, it shows its flaws because of the villain's implications and the way you discover the endings. It shows up the weak spots over there, but in general, you cannot really, excuse me, you cannot really complain about the story of this game. It's pretty much is straight point. Your first two main characters are getting kidnapped. Their role is to escape the island. They escape the island. They try to find other survivors, which then they are obviously, you can't allow the third character to survive for very long or for maximum one game because it's Capcom. So all the side characters, you meet them, they either become useful or they basically die immediately right there on the spot. What bothers me about the entirety of the game is the endings, and I think that's my biggest issue when it comes to the story of the game. So, on my first playthrough of this game, the ending that I have discovered was the bad ending. I didn't know how I triggered it, but the trigger is there. And how you decide which ending you are getting at the very end of the game? Well, at the Claire's chapter, episode 3, you have a boss fight with Nail. Because, yeah, I know, big surprise, Nail is a betrayer. He turns himself into a freaking big old muscle monster that only Chris Redfield would start getting jealous of. But without punching a boulder. Basically, after you sort of defeat that boss fight, Nail gets his final stance, and he grabs Claire. So basically, you have a situation, okay? I'm gonna try to visualize it. Maybe like this. So okay, resume is Nail, retry is Claire, gameplay status is Moira. Nail is on top of Claire, and he holds her pinned down. Actually no, gameplay stats, that's gonna be a gun. Let's put it like this. The gameplay stats is gonna be a gun, skills is Moira. So yeah, Nail pins Claire to the ground, gun is over here, Moira is over here. You can decide to make a Q to E with Claire, in which she grabs the gun, and she executes the Nail herself. But if you are gonna do that, this is where the evil ending kicks in. Which I think it's one of the it's not a good way to do that. In the between all the QTE action, you can actually switch the character and make Moira to execute Nail with the gun that is lying in between them. I do not really think that's a good way to implement the ending for the game, because as you are focused, tapping the F for your dearest life, trying to survive as Claire, the announcement to switch the characters happens on the top of the screen, on the upper part of the screen. And you pretty much do not see that because you are so focused on pressing F and looking at that F that is pulsing right in front of your eyes. If you have ADHD, that's even worse for you because you are just so focused on that thing that you don't get distracted by the other thing. Anyway, you basically, if you kill Nail as Claire, then at the end of the chapter 4, what is happening is that you both are escaping from the entire facility, from the crazy tower that you find, and Moira gets trapped under the rock. Claire is unable to rescue her no matter what. Claire jumps off the tower into the water. She gets saved somehow. I don't know how she gets saved, but she does. Anyway, there's one final cutscene that shows that her bracelet... Actually, I'm going to talk about the bracelets in a little bit. And how they got used. It's a little gimmick item that is actually very, very, very correctly implemented into this game. But basically, there is a final scene shown in which Moira is still under the rock, but her hand trembles and her wristbands just pulsates with red. which would suggest a certain thing. Okay, so the T Phobos virus that is in this game, it has been modified to react to people's emotions. And if you are scared, if you are afraid, no, basically the virus reacts to fear. If you have a lot of fear in you, you're starting to mutate. And your bracelet actually shows the stage of your anxiety. If you're on green, you're good. If you're on orange, you are anxious. If you are on pulsating red, that means you have fear, and the mutation is gonna start kicking in. Pulsating red, mutation kicks in, and that's what you see when basically the final scene of Moira's. You can also try to like stare at Moira as she's getting crushed under the rocks, but then she just dies. Then she just dies and nothing changes. You still escape no matter what. Later, as you do chapter 4 with Barry, what is happening is that you go through all those areas, and at the very end, after you defeat the final, well, at that point, what we think is the final boss fight with Alex Wesker, Natalia suddenly awakens all her freaking devil powers. She basically rips off the heart out of Alex Wesker and she destroys her. But because of what happens during that boss fight, basically the original Alex Wesker dies, and imprint that has been implanted into Natalia fully wakens up. She got all her Ouroboros powers, which I'm gonna assume it's Ouroboros. She gets all her powers, she gets all her abilities, and at that point, Natalia stops existing. Because even she herself said, Natalia? I'm not Natalia anymore. I am Alex, or something of similar stuff. Also, look at her wristband over here. Where is she? Yo, hey! Okay, she just moves away. If you can guys notice, on Natalia's left hand, you can see the wristband. That's the wristband that I'm talking about. And now her wristband is flashing fully red. Barry doesn't know that the wristbands are existing, so he never points it out. But the wristband over here basically shines full red. That means that the virus inside of Natalia has already mutated, he's already grown up. And also those wristbands are serving as a communication devices. So that's the other thing. But that was the bad ending to the game. A bad ending that in my opinion should be implemented way differently. You guys probably have just heard me saying that Moira gets getting crushed under the rocks. I think that would be a better way to implement which ending actually is being decided in the background by the video game itself. Because getting the ending just decided by which character you know shoots Nail at the end of the 3rd chapter, it can be pretty much missed like 90% of the time. Like on my first playthrough of this game, I actually missed it at the last second. I noticed, hey, look, there's something to press over there. Turns out there's nothing to press over there. Or it was too late to press something over there. So yeah, bad ending is probably gonna be the first ending that anybody is gonna unlock in this game. I know that I did. The good ending on the other side, it's like I said. Moira picks up the gun, shoots Nail down, which breaks her PTSD, breaks her hatred and fear of guns. And then as you progress normally through the chapter 4 with Barry, you defeat Alex, but instead of Natalia waking up all her full powers, it's Moira who saves Natalia from the clutches of Alex and basically saves the entire day, and basically everybody reunites and everybody's happy. But after this, Alex just kind of involves even more a little bit, which unlocks the actual final boss fight, which is pretty damn epic, because Claire arrives back in the chopper with the sniper rifle and the RPGs, and you basically shoot her down, and you absolutely destroy, you absolutely wreck her. Then Barry wrecks her. It's absolutely great, and Barry basically pulls up a gun, and he says his absolutely iconic line from Resident Evil 1, not the Jill sandwich. He says, I don't need that right now. For now, I have this. And he pulls up his freaking iconic revolver. And I love that cutscene to bits. I love how this is basic, like, the entire game is... You can definitely see that there was an effort put into this entire thing, and you can definitely see that the developers had fun while they were making this thing, and you cannot ever basically deny that. I love this thing. I love it a lot. Is there anything else that I could talk about? I think music is good. There's maybe one or two situations in which music can be annoying with a constant identical loop every 10 or 15 seconds, but I only had complained about that once throughout the entire game, and I cannot really say any other bad words. The entire music is like this mixture of ambience, a little bit of electronic, a little bit of not classic, a little bit of the action opera combination. But it all works together. It gives you a little bit more into the theme of the video game itself. Is there anything else that I could talk about the game? The overall climate isn't really feel like it's Resident Evil, which past Resident Evil 4, it was kind of really not what Resident Evil was going for. After Resident Evil 4, the Capcom have noticed, hey, you know, that action part is actually more important for us than the storytelling or creating a good theme. So they decided to go for Resident Evil 5. They doubled down with Resident Evil 6, but Resident Evil 6, a lot of people were not really happy with that. Though Resident Evil 5 and 6, Resident Evil 5 was probably one of the most sold game in the entire franchise, while Resident Evil 6 not really. Resident Evil 6 was a bad game in the first place. Like, I'm not gonna talk about it. We are here about talking about Resident Evil Revelations 2. But yeah, there's also a variety of locations. I mean, you're getting forests. You get a mine, you get even like this futuristic laboratory with Claire, you get the underground section. There is no lack of variety of locations in this game. You never get bored while you get through this game. And overall, to maybe like summarize all of this, because I'm probably talking for a very, very, very long time. If you ever manage to get yourself this game on a discount on Steam, grab it. I got it for $5. I don't know how expensive it is, but in a matter of fact, fuck it. I'm gonna check it right now. At the point of recording of this video, DLC, friends, web browser. I don't think I can get to the store through here. So maybe what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open the Steam from here. I know that the screen is frozen, don't worry about that. Resident Evil Revelations 2. Dude, it's not even discounted. And Revelations 2 right now is... It's not even discounted, and I'm gonna tell you something. This game right now, if you want to get Revelations 1 as well, you're gonna pay $25, I think. I don't know the real for you right now it's $6, but if you want to get it with all the DLCs, it's like $25-30. You can get the base game alone, but honestly, I would recommend getting it with the DLC. I'm gonna beat the DLC too. But the Revelations, even game of Revelations alone in itself is worth the $6, $7, $10, $15. It's absolutely worth it. It's a great Resident Evil game. And I wholeheartedly, as a fan of the series, I recommend it to everybody because this game is absolutely underrated. That is my opinion. This game is absolutely underrated. You don't hear about this game at all. Oh, if there's one thing that I haven't said, is that all the gems, because you pick up the gems along the way, you have a skills that you can basically buy yourself every single chapter, and you can make the game either more easier, or you can even become more destructive. And it's also great because it adds the replayability into the game. The New Game Plus in this game is also good. It's the New Game Plus that I really like. Basically, you don't lose your stuff. You don't lose any of it. You can start a new game from the main menu, and you can start it on higher difficulty, and you're gonna retain all your things that you have. This is the New Game Plus that I really enjoy. Basically, a freedom of choosing the difficulty, and freedom of not really freedom, but the perk of not losing your equipment. If there's one thing that I don't really like about this, is that once you start a game, you cannot start a fresh playthrough. Basically, once you finish the game once, the New Game Plus, it's the only way to play it. But yeah, get this game. Absolutely recommended from me as a Resident Evil fan since Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, pretty much. To me, if I could play this game somewhere, because my first place is always going to be Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, the one from 1999. It's always going to be there. It's my personal bias. On the second place is going to be Resident Evil 1 Remake. I consider it to be the best remake of all time. Well, okay, maybe the Dead Space is actually on the same level, but anyway. Resident Evil 1 Remake, it's going to be the second place. The third place goes Resident Evil 2 Classic, then Resident Evil 4 Remake, Resident Evil 2 Remake. After that, Resident Evil 1 Classic and RE4. I did not mention 7 and 8. I don't know why. But Resident Evil 7 is actually going to take the third place. Resident Evil 7 was a great game. And I think, in a matter of fact, placing this game... I think placing this game like right below Resident Evil 7 would be good. But then again, putting RE2 Classic even lower, it's kind of unfair. Anyway, I'm not gonna play like the top 10 bullshit because it's pretty clear that I'm not really great at it. Like, I'm not really great about making reviews, but I'm trying my best. Anyway, Resident Evil Revelations 2. Great game, underrated, get it, buy it, play it. Fans gonna love it, and if you are not even Resident Evil fan, I think this game is a pretty decent introductory game to relatively modern Resident Evil games. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, people of Twitch, people of YouTube, we're still gonna continue on. Actually, people of Twitch, we're gonna continue on, but people of YouTube, this is the end of this Resident Evil Revelations 2 review, and very amateur review, but we're gonna skip that. I really love the game. Links for everything that you guys need can be placed in the description down below, as well as a big comment. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'm probably gonna see you guys while I'm gonna be playing the DLCs, because there are two additional stories to this game. So yeah, thank you guys once again. I'll see you guys on the next one.